Sadarangana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Yontaf Pravesha Mama Vachamimam Prashuptam Sanjeevayathyakhila Shakti Dharasvadhamna Anyamscha Hastacharana Shravana Tvagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam.
Recording in progress.
So we're very fortunate to be with all of you. Today is an incredibly auspicious day because today is called Ekadashi. Ekadashi is a unique day because it is the constellation of the stars that make it extremely auspicious. And on this day, Ekadashi is a goddess. As you know, every day is represented by different gods and goddesses. And Ekadashi is a day where Goddess Ekadashi, she takes away extracts all the impurities from our lives and gives us higher spiritual consciousness. So, how this works is, many of you may have heard of this fast called the intermittent fasting. Anyone here heard of intermittent fasting? Yeah. This was a practice that was very prevalent, and it is still prevalent in the lives of those who practice spirituality and also practice bhakti. And this practice enables one to intensify one's spiritual awareness and shut out all the loud noise of the world and of our minds. So this is what Ekadashi is. And we have 2 Ekadashis a month. And it's a very interesting fast because it is not just physiologically beneficial, but it is emotionally and spiritually beneficial. We don't just starve the body just for the sake of the body. And that is what science is talking about. Intermittent fasting, all different kinds of fasting. It is strictly for the body. But the yogis, spiritual seekers, they know that there is more dimensions to our being other than the physical dimension. So therefore, whenever we do anything, we always try to see how we can address multidimensional aspects of our being. And this Ekadashi addresses multidimensional existence. Our physiological, our emotional, and our spiritual, which is the journey of the body, the mind, and the heart. And that's why we do this Ekadashi fast. Would you like to hear a small story? It's a story from the Puranas, the ancient wisdom texts. And this is the story of how Ekadashi comes to be. The origin of Ekadashi. It's tremendous amount of content is there, but I'll just tell you a small story. So one day, in the abode of Yamaraj, Yamaraj is the presiding deity of death or reincarnation. He has his own planet. It's called a Yamaloka. We all get an opportunity to go into his abode. And there, everyone is given an opportunity to express themselves as to why they lived the life they lived. If we ask that question before we go there, then we don't have to go visit that place. Why do we live the life that we live? Because we do not ask ourselves this question, then this Yamaraj, who is the most incredible personality, who is just filled with nothing but love and compassion, he's presiding over this planet. That's why he's called the god of death. Death, people think is bad, is horrible, is wretched. All kinds of words are there to describe death. But death is compassion, is love, is connection, is rebirth. And so this Yamaraj, I'll be using his name Yamaraj, the king of regulations, the king of death. So he's presiding and he gets to ask us this question. And we get an opportunity to actually address that question because we have not asked that question to ourselves in this life. So the end of this life, we still have to answer that question. And that is his unique service. So in his entire kingdom, in his entire planet that he presides over, there are also people who have made choices that are not very conducive to a happy, healthy life. And they have incarcerated themselves. As we know, we live in a world where we incarcerate ourselves. We are the jailer, we are the warden, we are the prosecutor, and we are also the prisoner. We imprison ourselves and we guard ourselves to make sure we don't get out of imprisonment. We are all of it. But in his planet, there are people who incarcerate themselves, and there are many such uncountable numbers of beings that are in this state of suffering and pain because they're incarcerated themselves. Like many of us, we blame others, but we are causing ourselves the most suffering and pain. We are the most harsh critique of ourselves. We torture ourselves, we torment ourselves. And in the planet of Yamaraj, the same thing is going on. And so there's so much suffering and pain in some of those chambers. And sometimes you can hear the loud crying and howling and suffering of souls. So this is what is going on. And one day, Krishna wanted to visit this planet. He wanted to know what is happening in this place. So that curiosity brought Krishna to the planet of Yamaraj. And when Krishna reaches there, he's just hearing the suffering and pain and the agony of souls. Many of us, we go through life, we are oblivious to pain and suffering of others. We don't see it. And those that are suffering are very equipped in masking their suffering. So no one can see it. All you get to see is the beautiful, happy self. Not the thousands of pictures that didn't turn out okay for my Instagram reel. Only the one picture that turned out perfect is what the world sees out of 1,000 pictures. And so this is what happens in our lives. We are able to mask our suffering and pain. And sometimes when it's unbearable, then we may use some external support. We go to doctors to prescribe remedies so that we can continue to mask ourselves so we do not express what is truly happening in our lives. So this is what is happening in the planet of Yamaraj, where they're no longer masked and they're crying and screaming and howling in suffering and pain. And when Krishna goes there, he cannot bear the pain and suffering that he is seeing. It's unbearable. No one in this world can bear the suffering and pain of others. If you have a heart, you cannot bear the suffering and pain. It's impossible. Because your heart will also start to show some cracks. And your heart will also ache, seeing the suffering of others. Because our constitutional conscious nature is soft, kind, and full of compassion. That is who we consciously are. Because we're not operating from that conscious state, and we're operating from the subconscious and unconscious state, then we're able to mask it and not see the suffering and pain of others. But Krishna, when he goes in to Yamaraj, he's seeing the suffering and pain, so much so that he cannot bear. So he asks Yamaraj, "My dear Yamaraj, why is there so much suffering and pain?" And he's explaining how the suffering and pain that you hear, the howling and screaming, it is all self-inflicted suffering and pain. My dear Krishna, what can I do? So Krishna says, I cannot bear this. And I want to do something about it. So then Krishna created this beautiful expansion from his existence called Ekadashi. And he told everyone in Yamaloka, the planet of Yamaraj, that you simply follow Ekadashi. You just follow her one day in your life. Then you will never have to go through this agonizing suffering and pain in your life. And her presence in the Yamaloka, and everybody respected her and followed her for one day. And the whole planet of Yamaraj, unlimited, uncountable number of souls, they all became free from suffering and pain. And that whole planet became empty. Imagine an empty space, a whole planet, no beings are there. The whole planet became empty. But then, when the planet became empty, there is another being who was thriving during the suffering and pain. And that personality is called Papa Purush. Papa Purush means the personification of what in English you will call it sin. People think sin is an act, but sin is a personality. And this personality enters different spaces. So, and this personality has a form. The yoga explains. When a person that kills divine and hurts divine beings in this world, that becomes the head of this sinful person. So his body is structured based on the different sinful activities that an individual commits. And he was having a good time in Yamaloka, in the planet of Yamaraj. And all of a sudden, he was sitting in the corner alone, completely frail and thin, because his body was disappearing, is dissolving, because there is no sinful people in Patalaloka, the place is empty. So when this happened, that his body was completely fleeting and was completely disappearing due to non-existence of sinful activities or sinful actions, then he approached Krishna. He says, Krishna, you are so kind to everyone but me. Why is this biasness in you? I am told that you are non-biased. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is a beautiful text where you told Arjuna, Samoham sarva bhuteshu, that I am equal to all beings and I am non-partial to anyone. But why is it that you're being partial? You've you have given everybody Ekadashi, and me, I'm left with nothing. So therefore, this Papa Purush, Papa means sin, the personification of sin, because he appealed to Krishna. Krishna said, my dear, my dear Papa. In Spanish, Papa means father, right? So, my dear Papa, in Sanskrit is Papa means sin. Please uh, hear me out. I have heard your prayers very clearly, and I beg you that on this day of Ekadashi, that on this day of Ekadashi only, you get to reside in all the grains. I give you a place for you to be. And whoever eats these grains, then you can get to associate with them. And so Papa, Sin, was given this space to be in the grains for this 2 days out of the month, so he could still have some nourishment, so he could actually survive. So on this day of Ekadashi is when Papa Purush is given special permission to reside in the grains. And therefore in the yogic texts you will see that the saints, they always fasted on this auspicious constellation of the cosmic stars, where it is a day where everything is aligned for spiritual upliftment, where we can take the day to free ourselves from all the suffering and bondage and pain that we inflict on ourselves simply by doing this fast. The body becomes free of toxins. Your whole entire physiology gets a little break. Your kidneys, your pancreas, all the enzymes, they get a little break from having to break down all the food that you eat, you know, and sending it all throughout your body. So they get a break. So they are all happy. And when they're happy, your consciousness is also filled with happiness and joy. Because we tend to think that we are the only residents in this body. And this wisdom test explains there is 33 trillion cells within this body. And they're also residing in this body. They're surviving because you're surviving. And you're continuously eating, and then not giving your body any break. So because you're not giving a break, they don't get a break. Because you don't have a regulation, they don't have a regulation. So part of yoga practice is to be non-violent. Ahimsa. Ahimsa, non-violent, when you're non-violent towards yourself, then you're non-violent towards all the living beings that are residing in this body. When we say we're a vessel for what? We're a vessel for all these living entities within this body. And so when we fast on Ekadashi, what we're doing is we're giving all of these living entities a break. Who doesn't want a holiday from work? When you're working 7 days a week, you feel tired and exhausted. When the boss says today is your day off, you celebrate. You feel happy. There is joy in your life that you finally get a breather. So similarly, on this Ekadashi day, you get this incredible breather where they get a breather, and what happens, they're good fulfilling their kind wishes, even though they may be so small. Just the fact that you're kind to them, your consciousness goes up, your physiological health gets better. And so much so, because your consciousness is so nice. One great saint, one of my favorite saints, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that this Ekadasi is Madhava Tithi. Tithi means the day. Madhava means the most auspicious day. It is the day of love. People think that fasting is an austerity. But in the wisdom text, it says fasting is the day of love. Because you are being kind and compassionate to yourself and to your body, to your mind, and to your soul. And this is why Ekadasi is very kindly and diligently celebrated by sages. Keshavi had asked me if we could talk about Ekadasi, because I message some people and I tell them that today is Ekadasi. So I said, okay, we'll briefly discuss about Ekadasi so that everyone can get a little glimpse. I can give you several classes on the science of Ekadasi, the science of fasting, the effects of fasting, and the, 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 the enlightening component of fasting. How just by fasting on certain auspicious days, your whole physiology, your psychology, and your energetic component will completely shift just by simple act of kindness, by the simple act of mindful of others other than yourself. Because the mind has a tendency to say, yes, you must eat. Look at this beautiful cheesecake. Look at all the salads. Look at all the food that is out there. How can you fast? How can you torture your body by depriving the body of all this delicious food? This is what the mind is saying. And everyone else in this body is saying, please give me a little break. You have been consuming so much food, so much food. Please give me a little break. We're on overdrive. Please give us a little break. So this is what Ekadasi is. Science call it intermittent fasting, and we call it Ekadasi. It's the waxing and the waning of the moon. Every 15 days, this comes Ekadasi. And so therefore, it is just something that I wanted to share with you today, that those of you who would like to fast, and all we're saying recommending is you fast from grains. You just take a little break from grains. You can have fruits and roots, waters, and non-synthetic food, packaged food, canned food, this food. The minimization of human fingerprints on the consumption for just this one day is how it is fasted. There's different degrees of fasting, and first fasting is not to eat anything. We just live on air. You just live on prana. That is one. Number two is you can live on water. Constantly, you can just drink some warm water all throughout the day. How beautiful it is. And third step is you can live on fruits and roots. And the fourth stage is you can have everything apart from grains. So these are four different ways of fasting. You'll know in Islam, some of you may know, they fast for a whole month. In Judaism also, I think they have this fasting. In the Ayurveda, it is explained that yes, it's good to fast. If your body has been used to consuming meat, then you should fast for a month. They recommend that. If you're a vegetarian, then they recommend that you fast. Give your body grain-free body for just twice a month. There is tremendous emphasis on spiritual benefits, emotional benefits, but I don't know if we can cover it in one class, but you will notice, just on an emotional level, you will notice that when you do a fast, because every 15 days I used to do a dry fast for many, many, many years. And now I just eat vegetables and fruits. And it's interesting experiment that you can do when you fast, how the mind is constantly so active. Just because someone told you maybe you should fast, your mind is like, no, 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 let's go grab some food. And on that day, you get to be a supreme observer of your mind. Because normally the mind is always moving 82,000 thoughts a day. Imagine that, an average. And on this day of Ekadashi, the voices become a little louder. And you get to be this beautiful observer of all the thoughts and emotions in your mind. So it is the day, that's why it's called Ekadashi. Did you observe Ekadashi is the question the yogis ask others. Do you observe Ekadashi? Observe because you get to observe your mind. You get to be the witness. Because most days in our lives, we are continuously moving and we never get to play the role of an observer. So on this day when you practice Ekadashi, your mind has no option but to make you an observer. So mindfulness begins with Ekadashi. If you want to practice mindfulness, you do this fast once a week, once every 15 days, and you get to observe it. And it's so beautiful. Because through observation, you get to put a little distance between you and the mind. Because we are so caught up in our relationship with the mind, we don't see, there is no distance. We think we are the mind. And the mind dictates all of our actions throughout the day. Literally dictates to you. Even when you shower, the mind is telling you, I am showering. You're walking, the mind is dictating, continuously dictating, and is driven by the senses. The senses want something, wants to see something, the senses are going and the mind is dictating. You are now walking in the forest. You are now walking to the Pizza Hut. You are now walking into this store, that store. So the mind continuously speaks. So on this day, you get to simply be the observer. And thereby, enabling this beautiful distance that is needed between you and the mind. When you're able to create the distance between you and the mind, then you become happy and the mind remains unhappy. And eventually the mind, who is your permanent companion, will also start rejoicing with you. And this is the very reason why Ekadashi is considered the day of love and the mother of devotion, where you're fully devoted to your internal awakening. Just once. And that internal awakening happens, the beginning stage of that is awareness, that mindfulness, that distancing from the mind. So Madhava Titi Bhakti Janani, the mother of devotion. And he explains Jatane Palana Kori in Sanskrit. In Bengali he writes that one must be diligent on this particular day, the mother of devotion, the day of love. It should be diligently followed, that we should take uttermost care of this love. So this is our Ekadashi brief talk on how Ekadashi came about and how through practice of Ekadashi you become free from this angst of suffering and pain that we carry in ourselves. We have been incarcerating ourselves for far too long. And through this practice, through the practice of Ekadashi, we can free ourselves from this internal suffering that is self-inflicted to no end. So I know I have taken a lot of time to speak on this topic. We have 12 minutes. And if anybody who here would like to do Ekadashi, who would like to observe Ekadashi, okay. So then what I will do is I'll share with you the day. I'll share you a few days in advance which those days are, and eventually I'll give you a full calendar so you'll get to have all the Ekadashis for the year, and you dedicate that day to yourself, to love, to cultivating devotion in your heart. So today is the day. So for those of you who have not eaten grains yet, you can start. The best time to start is now. And so you can start. And those of you who have already had some grains, that is completely fine. Please don't be hard on yourself. We'll start next week with you. Next Ekadashi, every 15 days. So, Keshavi has been doing Ekadashi. You have a few minutes. You want to share the effects of Ekadashi in your life?
I can't say I've been doing it too diligently recently. But when I first started doing it, it was really, really difficult. That was maybe a year or so ago. But gradually your body gets used to doing it. I I think I went a little too hard once after not doing it for a while and just went straight to just water, and it was too much. I woke up like in the middle of the night. It was really bad. So I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend doing a dry fast right away, but it would, if you want to try it, it would make sense just to do the roots or the fruits and the roots to start, I think. But anyway, yeah, no, I've noticed when I do it the next morning, my meditations are more like my sadhana the next morning of after fasting. My meditations are definitely a little more focused. My mind isn't as crazy, if that makes sense. So it's easier to meditate in the morning. So that's kind of my big takeaway from it.
Nitai does some serious fasting. He does a lot of water fast and dry fast. As you can see, he's withering away, he's wilting away. Neta, you want to share your experience of fasting?
Yeah, today I'm doing just no grains. So, but yeah, I think the experience is really good. You get to like you were saying, really observe the mind, like where it goes, to what food it goes, and then you can observe what emotions it is actually hankering for, the mind actually. Like maybe, if there is some food I like eating and I have eaten my whole childhood in the morning, then I hanker for that kind of food in the morning for some reason. And then it's like nice to observe it. And also it's a good day. You get 3 extra hours for doing more spiritual activities instead of eating. You get to read more. You get to do some extra yoga, extra, yeah, other kinds of things. So yeah, I think
Okay.
it helps you absorb more in spiritual stuff. So it's cool.
It's interesting you say that, Nitai, because observation gets you to absorb. If you do not observe, you cannot absorb. So therefore, when you become an observer, you're able to absorb more and more the spiritual practices. Okay. Thank you all so much. Any questions or any comments or any reflections anybody would like to share? We have 8 minutes. Yes, Kushita, please.
Did you think I was going to leave without talking? That doesn't exist. Thank you
Perfect.
so much for this share, and I'm so blessed to be with all of you. I have been doing now the fasting on Wednesdays for whatever reason, but I didn't have the knowledge or did the research to find it all. It's just like my spirit was leading me to do it. I really have to be honest that for me was also, since I'm working on having the connection with food, and I think talking about it a little bit, for me it was almost like, oh my gosh, I get myself a break of not thinking that I have to eat and I have to do. So I'm not really sure I had the right purpose for it. However, it hasn't been, obviously for the same reason that it's something personal I'm working on. It hasn't been as difficult, and it's been a journey. It's only been like 4 weeks, but it's been a journey of feeling that I can honor what I feel that is good for my body and my spirit and my mind. And now that I have more information, and I know Google, I could have done all that research, and I've heard things in that, but it was more, it almost like what happened with Reiki, that I applied it without knowing it was Reiki, and then I put in the study, and it's a beautiful, magical story that happened around that for me. And now I'm feeling that this is the same journey that is happening with fasting, that maybe a lot of us are feeling this inside of us, this like need or inquiry about it, or what if, asking the questions to create possibilities. But once you do it for whatever is your reason, just allow your body to enjoy the process, and it doesn't have to be as difficult as we think, whether it's a process that for me is working on the process of enjoying the whole the food, but others that might be more in the mind. So obviously doing it in a community and with more knowledge is more helpful. And we never know what you're going to speak about. And this has been just absolutely divine for me. So thank you, Veda, and thank you all for hearing my rambling as I'm just connecting the dots in this process of fasting that I had been yes, no, and then all of a sudden I just took it, and I'm now I will do it. Now I will do it for sure. So thank you for the knowledge.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add anything? Please don't feel shy to share your heart with us. Yes, Keshavi.
Yeah, if no one else is going to share, I was wondering if you could talk really briefly about the connection between the full moon and the days that are picked, or that Ekadashi falls on.
Yeah. There's a lot of connection, but it's interesting you bring this up. Ekadashi is preparing you, body, to prepare for the full moon. As you know, full moon means, everything is expanded. Moon is called Luna. And you know that on the full moon day, many people become lunatics. That's the term that they call. That you become a little, hypersensitive. And sometimes they call them hypersensitive people, they call them lunatics. I'm not sure if that's correct. Is that correct? And so that's where the term comes. And so on full moon, we become hypersensitive, emotionally, very charged. And so therefore, the energy of moon is very strong. Moon is connected to the mind. See, this space we talk about, the belly button, called the solar plexus, right? There's solar plexus and there's lunar plexus. So this is closely connected to the mind. And what happens is when you do the Ekadashi fast, you're preparing your mind to not be a lunatic. So your mind is not getting overly active. You're able to remain calm and peaceful in the full moon times. People think that it only affects women, but you'll be surprised to know anyone whose body is made of water, and which is all human beings, the primary ingredient that this body is composed of is water. And the oceans rise, the waters in the body. Water in the body means the chemical energy in the body is charged. And so man or woman, it doesn't decide what gender it wants to go after. It's just the nature's creation is such that your mind, emotions will be overly charged. And so therefore, when you do the Ekadashi fast, you're basically preparing that when all this eruption happens, the volcano eruption happens, you're always calm and peaceful. There's a lot of connection with Ekadashi and Purnima. Purnima is full moon. So Ekadashi is the 11th day, and 15th day is the Purnima. So it's 5 days before full moon is Ekadashi. And it gives you this beautiful time to, control, everything is, the tides are going high, 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 but you're able to control the tide so it doesn't become a tsunami. So that's a very simplistic explanation for why Ekadashi is very, very highly recommended by yogis and sages, so that you can always maintain your equanimity. Some people will say, well, I have too many ups and downs. But this Ekadashi fast, simply by this simple fast of Ekadashi, can bring down those big tidal waves and keep things more equanimous. So that's another very small. I just simply wanted to touch because we are out of time, and Keshavi wanted me to touch on that. So thank you all so much for your.
Very important. Thank you, Peter.
Any announcements? Keshavi, Nitai?
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we have some announcements. There's a retreat coming up. Nitai, you know the details. I think it's Labor Day weekend in Alabama with Veda in the U.S. So maybe Nitai, you can post the details in the registration in the chat. I don't know what else to say about it. But anyway, it'll be a great retreat with Veda if anybody is in the southeastern U.S. or wants to go there.
And then we have another retreat coming up in August in Pennsylvania, in the middle of Amish land.
Was that happening? Okay.
Yeah, it's happening. We'll have to send you the details. There's always something going on in life. There's never a dull moment.
Yeah, some of us in Connecticut were hoping to go to that if Veda was going to be doing it. So I guess if he's doing it, maybe we'll go. Anyway.